Hey, I'm James from Smoking Dad Barbecue, and today I'm cooking something I've never seen, let alone had the opportunity to taste before. We've got the Wagyu of pork. This is an Iberico pork roast, and I was blown away. I walked into J&G's, my local butcher, and sure enough, sitting behind the counter was this little gem. And so we're gonna treat this just like I would Wagyu beef. You don't want to overpower this and really take away from the wonderful piece of meat that we have. So for seasoning, I'm going to keep it really simple. Salt and pepper only. And so I'm going to use my favorite finishing salt. It's Fleur de Sel. And then a little bit of fresh cracked black pepper. And that's it. Included in my package was a stem of rosemary. So we're not going to smoke this Iberico. I don't want to overpower it or take away from the full experience of the pork itself, but I already know from poultry or prime rib that a little bit of herb smoke bombs adds a really light and fresh, wonderful, just hint of smoke without taking anything away from the meat. So that's the game plan. I'm just going to toss that in the fire when it's the time. Speaking of the fire, we want to get our fire going. So let's move over to the Kamado Joe Classic 3 behind me and show you how I'm going to set up for today's cook. So as you can see, I'm starting with the Joe already cleaned out with the coals piled to the back. So the first thing we're going to do is just grab our grill blazer, our sous vide gun, start a fire down in the middle because that will work its way to the back. And then I'll show you how we're going to set up for the rest of today's indirect cook. So that looks good. We have some glowing ashed over coals. We can now install our soapstone. So I'm going to use the X accessory ring just to give some support to our deflectors. Drop in our soapstone, which is looking nice and clean since after the last cook, I turned the temperature up to about 600 degrees Fahrenheit and almost everything fell off and came nice and clean, so it looks good as new. Install a cooking grid above. And when we are cooking, I'm going to drop this other deflector stone right down like this so we are fully indirect, but I want to get some heat up into the dome. So to help this pre-warm, I'm just going to set this on top now while our Joe comes up to temperature. Bottom vents all the way open and top vents all the way open. So our cooking temperature today I want is about 250 degrees, and you'll already notice, hey James, you're a little bit past that. That's no worry. I want to make sure that I get some heat in the dome, which I'm just starting to get. So we're going to put our bottom draft door down to 1 finger, and our control tower top I'm going to put right on this first line here. So first line, or just touching the end of the M, and we'll make any adjustments as we need for about 250 degrees. But we're going to also install that other deflector plate now so we get a full indirect setup. Get my high heat gloves so we don't get burnt. So now we'll drop this other deflector plate right down here to join the soapstone. Our soapstone is going to be preheating the entire time so that later when we start to crank the heat and we want to go for a quick blast sear, it will take no time at all for that to come up to temperature. But now we're going to have a nice full indirect cooking area. So this is where we'll place our roast. I'm just going to close this now, wait for it to stabilize at 250 degrees, and then we'll throw it on. Okay, our grill is now holding steady at 250 degrees Fahrenheit, so we're ready to get our roast on. You saw inside I already installed the meter probe, which I'm going to set up to track, and I'm going to go for a low temperature just so I have an opportunity to check and make sure I don't overcook this. So I'm going to set it for 120 degrees Fahrenheit, which is well below where this is going to finish up. But I already know from many different experiments, a roast this size is going to carry over cook. In fact, my guess on this one is it might go as much as 10 degrees Fahrenheit up. So if we pull it off at 120 degrees Fahrenheit, I think that's going to carry over cook to about 130 degrees Fahrenheit. And then when we go for inferno mode, the game plan is to slice these into chops and blast sear each side individually. So we're going to land up right in sort of the medium rare to medium well on a few of the smaller ones for the kids and guests who prefer their pork to be a little bit more well done. But I'm going for the full medium rare experience. Let's go over to the Joe and get this on. All right, it's go time. So just using a high heat glove, I'm going to pop that up. Take our rosemary sprig so that I can drop that right into the coals. That won't last very long, but that will give just an incredibly bright and fresh aroma. So you're really going to like that if you haven't tried it. And then in terms of our roast, I'm going to drop it right here like this. And the reason I'm doing that is I'm just, any heat that's coming up this way, there's more opportunity for the heat to come around our deflector plate, is I have the back of the bones that are going to protect the roast. So I'm keeping the roast towards sort of the most indirect portion. Oh man, the rosemary already smells incredible. So let's close that and let this start to cook. So an hour and 15 minutes later, the meter sent my phone alert saying it is time to get our Iberico pork roast off and let it rest. But before we do, one of the things I like to do for this shape of a roast is use the sous vide gun and get a bit of a sear on the outside. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut this into medallions and sear them individually, but that would be hard to get a sear sort of all the way around the circumference of a circle shape. So before we do that, let me bring you nice and close. We'll pull out the probe, give that a quick little blast sear with our sous vide gun, let it rest, and we'll switch from low and slow to hot and fast inferno mode on our Kamado Joe Classic 3. So you can see we've been riding right along at 250 degrees Fahrenheit, and ooh, that looks good. So game plan here, I just want to get a little bit of color on the outside. I'm not going to worry about either end because that's what we'll sear on our soapstone. So to do that, I'm just going to grab my sous vide gun. You can do this with a sous vide gun or the proper full grill blazer gun. This is 240,000 BTU, and it has this little diffuser, which makes it a little bit easier to sear versus the full gun, which would completely blast this. So let's fire this up. Just get a little bit of color on the outside here. So that looks great. Let's get that off, let it rest. As well, we're going to pull off the cooking grate and this deflector, and then we're going to open up our bottom vent and top vent all the way so we can really start to get this soapstone up to temperature. I want to see over 600 degrees Fahrenheit on the surface temp right now. Let's see what we're at. So we're about 420, 440 degrees. So already a good temperature. So that, using the soapstone as a heat deflector, preheats it, so it's not going to take very long. In fact, I think the soapstone will be ready to go for a sear before we're done our rest. So let's close this and let the fire build up. So this is maybe one of the craziest rests I've ever had on any roast. So we pulled this off at 120 degrees Fahrenheit. As you can see, I left my meter probe in to track the rest. It's not warm out here. It's about 45 degrees Fahrenheit, and this has continued to gain temperature over the last half hour all the way up to 138 degrees Fahrenheit before starting to retract and go down the other way. So that's a little bit more than what I bargained for. So maybe Iberico performs different than a lot of sort of larger beef cuts that I've worked with, but this is crazy. So anyways, we're going to now get our meter probe out. It's done its job. Just set that aside and grab a knife. I'm going to use my new Towel Strong slicer here I got for a video comparing the different chef knives. This one is just so pretty, I can't stop using it. So make sure you're subscribed to catch that. But the game plan now is just to cut these into individual chops. And what I'm looking for here is the direction of the bone. If I was to go straight down, I'd be striking the bone here. So I'm going to follow sort of the shape of the bone so I don't hit those, and we get a couple chops we can take over to our soapstone and sear. Let's slice these up. Okay, I suspect our soapstone's good and hot, likely beyond being able to read a temperature. Oh, 680. So yeah, that is perfect. I did need to add 1 or 2 pieces of fresh charcoal just to help get that temperature up. I started with only leftover coal, and based off of this being over an hour cook and I needed a little bit more BTU, I threw a few more pieces in there, so that's giving off some good heat now. But let's start, get a couple pieces on for a sear. So that looks good to me. A quick little pan sear on our soapstone. Let's get these off and get ready for our taste test. So these look and smell amazing. Let's get a slice off here. for our taste test. Oh, so juicy. This looks amazing. This is really weird. Like the sensation of how much, you know, fat is rendered out and is sitting on the board here. It is just like we had done some Wagyu beef. So I'll do 2 little pieces here, and I've got a little bit more of that fleur de sel that I mentioned using for the rub. So I'll just give a little bit of salt to one piece. We'll sample one with and one without. Let's dig in. Starting without salt. I don't even know where to begin to describe that. That's not what pork should taste like. That's really good. Let me try the second piece with salt. That is remarkable. Lost for words how to describe it. It's got it. When we sear it with the soapstone, it almost tastes like bacon on the outside. So the crust, as if we had a bacon wrapped medallion, but it's not wrapped in bacon. That's just the fat crisping up. It tastes like bacon, and then it melts away into this proper pork taste, which is really just accentuated by that salt and pepper. And it's so juicy though. Like, it's unbelievable how juicy this is. And that rosemary, I can smell it. I can't taste it. I don't taste any smoke on this whatsoever, but you just get, when you sort of bring it nice and close and you get a bit of a whiff, you can get that nice fragrant aroma that just smells. It smells like pork should smell like. This is so good. Anyways, I'm going to take this inside before it completely cools off and serve it to our guests. I do have a little bit of balsamic vinaigrette, which the plan is just to drizzle a little bit of that over, because I think that'll be good, you know, to go with this pork. But this is amazing. This is my first and definitely not my last go at Iberico pork. Let me know what you'd like to see next. Anyways, if you enjoyed today's video, please let YouTube know to share it to others by smashing that thumbs up button, and let me know if you haven't already by hitting subscribe to catch future videos. Until next time, I'm James from Smoky Dad Barbecue signing off, and remember, don't be afraid to fire it up.